Very good evening to you, and welcome to this evening's edition of Politics 101. Wherever you are in Guyana, whether you're in Georgetown or in the villages or Linden, whether you're in Brooklyn, New York, where a lot of our Guyanese reside, or whether you're somewhere in Canada or in the Caribbean, Barbados, the Bahamas, or Antigua, wherever you are, welcome to this evening's edition of Politics 101. Our program has been very much in the news thanks to some mischievous people who have attempted to derail one of our early guests on this show. I'm talking about Sister Amanza Walton Desir. And so they will be paying lots of attention to our program, and that's fine, because what we do on this program, as you know, is that we teach, we learn, we share, we organize, and we mobilize. You know that we should share the link to alert others that we're on. So please, each of you, please share the link. Those of you who have not yet followed the Politics 101 page, you should do so. Follow the page, like the page, do all the things that we need to do to ensure that the program grows and reaches the corners of the earth where Guyanese and West Indian people reside. This evening's program is going to be one with a slight difference, because we have one guest, and she is, and yes, it's a she is a young person. And as we are want to do on this program, we will introduce our guests to you, and we'll talk about a range of issues. So there is no single issue that we will deal with here tonight, a range of issues. I'm talking about Tabitha Sarabo-Halley, who was the Minister of Public Service in the previous government, and she's the Shadow Minister of Public Service in the opposition. She's a member of Parliament. She's one of the younger crops, one of the younger members of the crop, sorry, not younger crops, one of the younger members of the crop of new political persons who have entered the fray. We made reference to Amanza. Tabitha is part of that group. She's young, but she's like a veteran, because she's been around, I think, as far back as the 2011 election. So she has had a decade in the trenches already, and it's good to see young people coming through. And we want to use this program to introduce them to you and have them speak directly to you, and you speak directly to them. So share the link, tell others that Politics 101 is on. We shall not be deterred. We shall continue with the mission of this program and similar programs on these alternative platforms that we have been forced to use because of the embargo that they've put on opposition voices in the traditional media. But that too shall pass. Tabitha Sarabo, Honorable Tabitha Sarabo-Halley, welcome to Politics 101.
Good night. Thank you for having me this evening. It's good to be here with you.
Wonderful. And Guyana is a small place, so word gets around very quickly. But for those of you who do not know, a disclaimer, there is some family connection here. But as Tabitha will tell you I hold family to a higher standard. And when she was a student in my classes, along with her two sisters, they were held to higher standards because their family expect them. So no easy ride. I shall be treating her as an independent person in her own right. How have you been doing, Tabby, if I may call you that?
I've been okay. I think I'm doing well. You know, you have to deal with the punches as they come, but I think I'm strong enough. I have a good support system, and so we've been working through all of it pretty okay.
Wonderful. And Tabitha is a mother, among other things. And we need to stress this because often we do not take into consideration the way in which women have to juggle being mother, being wives, being daughters, being granddaughters, in our case, and still really contributing to public service and politics. How are the kids?
They're all well. I have three of them. They're doing well. We're battling with the homeschooling because COVID doesn't allow them to go to school, and so you know you have to come home and still deal with ensuring that they do their schoolwork and they get their things in. But they're still small because the biggest of them is 5, and they're doing pretty well.
Yes. And imagine being 5 years old and 3 years old and 2 years old and growing up in a political home. It must be quite an experience for the little ones. I know their cousin is here where I live here, and he's quite a little political person himself. He spots things very easily. And is quite inquisitive, and he's just 3 years old. So let's Tabitha, tell our audience what sparked your interest in politics.
Well, to quite frank, I was not really interested in politics at the beginning. In high school, I did all the science subjects. I had great intentions of becoming a doctor. That went out the window at some point in time. But when I was at university, I was trying to decide on what my major should be. And I realized, some nights I would go to sleep and I would have these thinking about what is happening in Guyana with the young people in Guyana and how the political system is just really not helping our young people to grow into who they should be. And that sort of drove my decision to get into the political science stream. And once I started there, it was like, yes, this is exactly where I needed to be, because you have the discussion as to whether or not being out of the system or being in the system, how do you actually create that change? Do you need to be in the belly of the beast, so to speak, to create the change? Or can you advocate for change from the outside? And I made a decision that being involved in politics on the inside is where I needed to be to help to develop and to create that change and to be a part of policy making that would help young people to reach their fullest potential here in Guyana.
And of course, you did your studies, your tertiary studies at the Arizona State University, and you were involved in student politics, student organizing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I was involved. I helped to found some of the student organizations, political organizations at Arizona State University. It was really an interesting time of my life because coming from Guyana into Arizona, anybody who knows Arizona knows it's not necessarily the easiest of places to move from Guyana to. And so we were in a little, the department, the African American Studies department, was like a family. That is where you sort of, you ensure that you were covered in that department, given the difference in culture at Arizona. And so a group of us came together and we started Society, African American Studies Society organization. We started a political organization, just basically helping to advocate for African and African American students on campus. So that they can know that there's more than just what they see right there in Arizona and Arizona State University. And it was a good space because I got to see the world in a different light. I got to understand some of the things when you're in Guyana. It's a different context from the United States context, and so you were able to see the differences, and it helped you to understand better your own country as well. And so I'm grateful that I was able to have that experience in Arizona.
And as a child, I think you should tell the audience that as a child, you yourself came into contact with some of the big names in politics in Guyana, one of whom became president. Um, tell us about some of those persons.
Yes, I think this is all thanks to you and your connection with me that I was able to see. I have to first of all start off with Buddy Uzi Kwayana. So we had a lot of engagements with him when we were young, and he is really a very interesting, down to earth as you can get. But so full of wisdom, so full of knowledge, and even at a young age, you can see that, of course, Dr. Rup Narain, and also as I got older, there are other persons in the WPA, and also, of course, the then president when. At some young age, you would see him come to the home and have discussions with even you on some historical African and African Guyanese and historical matters and stuff like that. So I would say politics was around me for a while, but I never really embraced it until my university days when I recognized that this was the medium that was necessary for me to get into to make the change that I wanted to see. And so, yes, I guess I have been around, and I cannot say Dr. David Hines as well, right? So I've been around.
Talk about the others.
So I have been around a lot of the more popular political minds and activists in the country, and I'm guessing in some way they rubbed off on me without me recognizing, but at the right stage, I decided that it was necessary for me to also get involved.
And you cut your teeth in real actual politics in the 2011 elections. And I remember that election quite well because it's a whole new generation of young people who really came to the fore in that election. There was an organization of young people that you all formed. I know some of the meetings were held at your house. Tell us about that experience around the 2011 election.
Yes, I got back home in December of 2010. And the 2011 elections was upon us, and I decided, you know what, this is my year to get involved. And it was an interesting period for a lot of young people. They were ready for change. They were ready for something different. They grew up under the PPP, and they knew that that is not what they wanted to see continue in the country. And so I think there was a group of us that just put our all into the 2011 campaign. We formed an organization called Youth Coalition for Transformation. And these were not necessarily persons who were in a political party per se, but they were just young people who gravitated also to this new idea of an APNU that had just formed. And so we went into every nook and cranny of the country to help people to understand the concept of APNU, what it meant, and that all of these parties are involved, and we have to now come together as one to try and get rid of this party that has been in office for 23 years and has just done so many things that you just knew that he did not want it to continue. And so I think the young people there during the 2011 campaign, I think we grew together, we recognized, we understood politics at a different level, being so involved in it. We got to see so much of our country because most of us were from Georgetown. And I think for some of us, it birthed a new love for Guyana. As you go out and you meet with people, you speak with people, you hear their concerns, you hear how they would have had to deal with living under such an administration who really didn't care for the people, and so it affected your the way in which you then represented their needs and their interests moving forward.
Yes, and certainly that was a tremendous. It was the first election that we actually won. Although we didn't win the presidency, we won that election, and that was a stepping stone for 2015. But before we get to 2015, there's another aspect of your life that I don't think the audience is familiar with. You lectured at the University of Guyana. Tell us about that, or tell them about that. Yes.
Yes, I did. From 2011 to 2016, I was a lecturer at the University of Guyana in the Faculty of Social Science, political science courses. I did introduction to Caribbean politics. I did, so I think there were 3 or 4 courses I lectured at the University of Guyana. And my biggest class was about 200 persons in one class. And it was a way to engage the young people at a different level. And it was a interesting experience, and I don't want to go too far forward because I was dealing with theory during that time, and then you had to end up putting it into practice in 2015, and I was glad I was able to get that opportunity to do that. But yes, being a lecturer, engaging the young people, I also got to see also how our education system works. At a different level, because now you're dealing with persons at university level. They have to write essays, they have to analyze, critique the writings and the readings that they're given, and then you get to see whether or not the education system between nursery to secondary was properly help them to deal with a university level education, and how it is that they transition to a tertiary level education. So that too was also interesting, even as I was lecturing during that period.
And of course, you're quite active in the church. You've always been, from since you were a child. You grew up in the church environment. Tell us about how that has helped to shape your own life, but shape your service as a public person.
Yeah, anyone who knows me, I'm not really an extrovert by nature. I'm more inclined to be, I'll be at home all the time. I have no problem with COVID. Really doesn't affect me in the sense that I like being in my home, right? But because of that yearning, I needed to I needed to come out of my shell, so to speak. And being in church has really helped me because there are times when things happen and you need some grounding or some foundation and somewhere to turn when the things are not always going the way you expect it to. And for me, church has been that place. I get a lot of guidance from my pastor. I go to Love and Faith World Outreach Ministry in Sophia. I've been a member of that church for about 8 years or 9 years now. I'm youth leader along with my husband of that, the youth group there, Joshua Generation youth group, Love of Faith. So I'm very much into church. I'm very much into the word. It helps me to decide how it is that I should move forward. It keeps me grounded, and the whole idea of servant leadership comes from that. When you look at the word and you see how a lot of the persons in the Bible, how they would have served their community, served the people, that is where I get my foundation in servant leadership, what it actually means, and to remain humble in all circumstances, and don't get too haughty with every little title you may or may not get, but recognizing that it's not ever about you. It is about what you can do for the people, and so that has always been my groundings. Yes.
And we cannot end this part of the program about you introducing yourself to the audience and let them see that there is a person behind the political activist, behind the politician. There is a person. And it is for that reason that I usually do this segment with my guests. Your mother has played a very important role in your life. Tell our audience about that.
Well, yes, and this Sunday is actually Mother's Day, so this would be a very good time to me to rep her. She has been a rock, as you in your teenage years and you your rebellious stage, you think that you know it all, and your mother has, your mother is always there guiding you, even when you don't want to take the guidance. But she has been my rock, and in these last years, when you're more public and you have children and you need the community around you to help you through it all, and she has always been there. Um, she is a professional. She's always worked, so she's always been going to the office, coming home, and you see that part of her. But she's also very much into family and ensuring that her children get the best of her, and ensuring that she is there as much as she can be for them. And she has sacrificed a lot to get us to where we are today, and I could only be very thankful and grateful for all that she has done thus far for us. She was here just a couple of minutes ago before I started to get ready to make sure that I got the time to prepare. So she was there with the kids for a bit just now.
Tabitha Sarabo-Halley, my guest tonight on Politics 101. In case you're just joining us, we spent the first part of the program having Tabitha introduce ourselves to you. And like I said, I want my guests to do that so that you understand that they are like you. Tabitha is like any daughter, any sister, any wife. She has a life outside of politics, and I think that is extremely important. If, in case you're just joining us, please share the link. Please go do what you have to do. Follow the page, like the page, all of that kind of stuff that we do. Tabitha, you couldn't hide from what has been happening in the last week. The kind of assault on your colleague, Amanza Walton Desir. I think it's a baptism of fire, if you will, for Amanza and for the rest of you young people who are coming into this arena. Guyanese politics is rough. It's tough, and it can be vicious. And so part of the preparation to serve has to be to anticipate that kind of stuff. Any thoughts you have on this episode?
Well, as you rightfully said, and I said it to her, it was a baptism. It was a very serious baptism for her. But I think it shows a couple of things. I think one, it shows the tenacity of our young people, that we are not afraid to broach the hard subjects. I think if you know Amanza, you know that she of course, I'm not going to say it. We know who she is, and she is not what they're trying to put on her, claiming that she is. But what she is somebody who wants to broach the hard subject. She wants to have the difficult conversations. And I think in this group of the members of parliament that you see, we're all ready and we want to have it because we recognize that that is what has been holding our country back. And so we wouldn't shy away from the difficult questions. We won't shy away from the difficult topics. And what I see is in that so vicious of a response is a signal to us that we should not try to broach this subject, because that is where the PPP has hinged its power, its ability to remain in power on. And if we try to go against that and try to speak to the issues, then they would have no other leg to stand on. And that is how I see what has happened over this week. But rest assured, it has not wavered us one bit. What it has done is helped us to recognize that this is something that we really need to tackle, and we will tackle it seriously, and we will have the serious discussions. David, let me I've been thinking about this particular matter for a while, and how the PPP operates, and I am trying to understand the how the PPP has been able to do what it has done for so long and continue to do it in this particular vein. They have been able to, suggest that everybody else is wrong and bad, and doing all the negatives, and they seemingly are without any, any stain. That is what they try to project. And I I'm not going to say names because I don't want us to get into problems, but I will say this. I have come to the recognition that and I believe wholeheartedly that what it is, it is bigger than race. And I'll tell you why. There's this need for power. And this need for power has to use something to remain in power. And if you go back into history, racism was used as a tool. It was used because persons wanted, they wanted increased wealth. They wanted to justify the use of men as slaves. They wanted to justify the need to divide the lower classes. And so they had to find something to use to ensure that they remained in power and they can continue to do what it is that they were doing. And so they used racism. What has happened from then to now is that persons have taken it on. Persons have believed in it, so it's now become true to people. This racism thing is true. We know it is not, but persons are now using it to continue that power structure. And so while they may be racist, which I believe that they are, I think it is bigger than that because it is a need to remain in power that is causing them to hold on to this idea of racism so that they could continue to generate and get wealth for themselves and those that are around them. And how do I justify these statements that I'm making? When you look, for example, at what happens in Guyana, in the communities, all communities, when during 2015 to 2020, we got some chances to go into some communities that would be seen as VP strongholds. And they have been begging for years for light, begging for years for water, begging for years for roads, and nothing. They didn't get it for the 23 years. When we look at the sugar industry, supposedly a PVP stronghold, they themselves are the ones that made the sugar industry go down. The EU gave them 300 and something billion dollars to find a way to deal with the sugar industry. They squandered it. They didn't put it into the sugar industry and ensure they got the best people in the world to come and fix the sugar industry, which are supposedly for their supporters. What they did was squander that money for themselves, which suggests to me that it's not race, it is power and it is greed that is the driving force. And what they're using is this race thing that they know people will hold on to continue their thing in power. And so that as young Guyanese, we have to recognize this and say no more, because the rest of us, which is the majority of society, are not gaining from what it is that they're doing at the top there. And not gaining from what it is that they're able to get and garner for themselves and their cronies and because we're not important. It's about remaining in power, getting more wealth for themselves. I don't know how much wealth you really need as a one-man show, but apparently you need more than you currently have.
Excellent point. And this is what makes a teacher proud. When you hear your former student make the link between race and power. So race in itself, ethnicity in itself is not the issue. It's the linkage of race and ethnicity to power that is really driving them. And I think it's a really excellent analysis. It's the kind of analysis that Amanza was making, and they tried to shy away from, and to create all that smokescreen. But it is the way in which the PPP and unscrupulous politicians have used race, they have exploited
Yes.
people's racial feelings
Yes.
for their ascension to power and to keep power. And I think the example of sugar and the sugar industry is important. Our subsidy of sugar, where we are spending 40 cents to produce sugar, to sell it for 13 cents, doesn't make economic sense. We are subsidizing the people who are buying the sugar, who are the Europeans. That's what we're doing. But yet, when the coalition government attempted to make the sugar industry be a profitable industry for the sugar workers and for Guyanese, they said, that it was racially motivated. Again, pressing the race button. And they want your generation not to talk about race.
Yes.
Because if you don't talk about race, you then don't get to talk about what they're doing with sugar. You don't get to talk about what they want to do with regards to shore um, pipeline. You don't get to talk about what they intend to use the revenue coming from oil to do because they intend to hide that as much. I'm very glad that without prompting from old people like myself, you young people have drawn the lesson from this Amanza issue that they want to shut you up. They probably want you not to come on this program tonight. Because if they hammer Amanza, then the other young people say, stay away from David Hines, stay away from politics 101. Let us big up you all young people for showing courage. Courage in politics. Courage is one of the values that is most important. You've become a kind of an expert on this scholarship business. And I want you to help the audience here to understand how this issue of the scholarship has been and continues to be one of the roots or routes, as we will say in Guyana, that the PPP uses to extend patrimony to just one group of people. Draw for us. You go ahead.
No, let me first start off by saying that there's nothing wrong with getting scholarships.
Yes.
Everybody should go and apply. Everybody should apply for them. If you can, if they come to your community, you apply. I want to see that you get through. So if you get through, good for you. So I want to make that. We have no issues, the APNUFC, we have no issues with persons applying and getting scholarships. But we have to understand what is at work here. It is never about, with the PPP, as far as I'm concerned, it's never about the interest of the people. It is how you can always use something to better yourself in some way, shape, or form. And that is what is happening with the scholarships. Now, first, let me start with the fact that they put a whole billboard saying that they delivered 20,000 scholarships, when at this particular point in time, they have not yet given out one scholarship. So this is the propaganda that is already in play, right? They have not given one out. It's application time. So the fact that they could put up billboards saying that they delivered on 20,000 scholarships, it's an eye-opener as to what it is that they have planned, that they can't even be truthful about that. Now, here is what happened, what I saw when I was the minister for a period, which is that there were so many cases of persons who supposedly were granted scholarships. And I say supposedly because the monies had names next to them. The monies went to some other account from the Ministry of Public Service, but we got no indication from some of the individuals whether they were actually studying. You got no indication whether or not they went through any semester of their university life. We just saw that the money went somewhere, and it supposedly was to help somebody to get an education in some particular field. So that is the one issue. And they had many cases of that. I mentioned in my press statement, it was $78 million worth just went on two persons. We have no sense where they are, how they, whether or not they are still studying or not, because they weren't even Guyanese that were able to get that scholarship. Now, we had the other instance of the particular minister's daughter, where she was able to receive a scholarship. She went to study. Over $30 million spent on her on education. $1.5 million, I think, was $7,000 a month was spent on her rent. And then at some point, the minister decides to send, and this is particularly interesting when it was sent. The January after the no confidence motion, a letter was sent to the Department of Public Service requesting that she be relieved of all of the contractual obligations to the government of Guyana, relieved of the $30 million that was spent on her, and they cited mental issues. But on side of that, she's now back in country. One, we saw a video of her walking across the stage getting her certificate. And two, we know that she's back in country and she's working. Now, when you juxtapose that against all of these persons that they're claiming are APNU persons, they like to call Minister Simona Bloom's children. I can tell you that they every semester they show their grades. They're doing very well in school. One, I think the young lady is already back here and has started working. And so it's an interesting dichotomy that you know what you would have done. You know that you used it for your own reasons and your own purposes, and persons that you would have sent off did not even come back to serve their country. And then you try to put that on persons who benefited from AP and UAFC scholarship, but are serving their country, and they're doing it happily and without any constraints, and not, because they recognize that the country paid and invested in them, and it's only right that they give back to the country. But this whole idea of these 20,000 scholarships is now worrying because of that fact, because of the fact shows that history would repeat itself. And the history is that they gave off money to people. We don't know if they actually went to scholarship or not, whether they went to university or not, but the money has disappeared. $78 million in one instance. And if they have 20, and you times that by 20,000, how much money can be funneled off into somebody's private pockets, stating that, you gave out a scholarship? And mind you, some of the scholarships that they're saying they're giving out, I'm waiting to see if they put a dollar value to them, because some of them you get for free, especially in India. They give a lot of short courses as scholarships. You don't have to pay for them. It's government-to-government relationships. And so they decided they're going to give 20 person scholarships this year in this particular field, short courses and stuff like that, and you don't have to pay a cent at the government level. So I'm waiting to see whether they actually put any dollar value to those scholarships to say that they would have paid for these persons to get these to do these short courses. So there's a lot of places where they can utilize the scholarships as a slush fund for themselves and their cronies. And that is what we have to guard against. And that is why I asked all of those questions when I saw that they launched the 20,000 scholarships program.
There's been a lot of talk about this GOAL, goal story. Explain that to us.
Yes, and that is the program that is supposed to be dealing with the 20,000 scholarships. And the other issue that we have with this is that the Ministry of Public Service, it has a scholarships program already. It has the system, it has the procedure, it has the process, it has everything in place already. So if you wanted to add 20,000 scholarships to that, it was easy for you to do so because the system was already in place for you to do that. That they will go through a route now to establish something that is new, independent of the process that already exists in the ministry, suggests that there's something afoot. And then put persons in place that are maybe questionable. It calls you to question a lot more what it is that they are trying to do. And you cannot put anything past the PPP as far as I'm concerned, because a process is already established, a system is already established for scholarships. So if you're going to try to create something new and say 20,000, you have to come through this particular bracket, then I don't know what is behind that is ensuring that, that it's all checks and balances are there, it's transparent, it's accountable. Who are they accountable to? And then on top of that, it is between the Ministry of Public Service and the Ministry of Education, and then you don't know where the slippage is and where the loopholes are, where that is concerned, because now it's in between two ministries that are actually dealing with it. So you have two ministers that are overlooking different aspects of it. So where are the loopholes even in that to suggest that things can just fall through? And so there are a lot of questions that should be asked as it pertains to this particular initiative. As lovely as scholarships are, as lovely as the government should always be willing to give scholarships to people, we have to always ensure that they're doing it the right way, for the right reason, and the right people get the scholarships, and it's equity and equality across the board.
And that parallel architecture that they're attempting to put in place there, if you remember a couple of months ago, they talked about what are a parallel border patrol. We already have an army that is patrolling our borders, but they're talking now about what? A new border patrol. So you have established institutions, they're creating parallel institutions, something like the Phantom that they created when they were in power the last time outside of the security forces. So you're right. You're right. Oversight is extremely important when you're in opposition. Let me ask you this. You were public service minister. The elections were manipulated in a way so that you have another government that is installed today, but you must have had plans that if you were returned to that ministry, if the coalition had won the election, what you would have implemented. What is your vision? What plans you have in mind, even now that you're in opposition, for improvement of the public service?
Yes, yes, we actually did, and we were. It is interesting because, when it is that you're really interested in development of a country and of a people, there's an approach you take, because your interest is in the people and not yourself. And so when you decide to start a program, you start an initiative, you start, you create a policy, it is with the people in mind. And so you ensure that you cross all your T's, you dot all your I's, because you want to ensure that the people benefit from that particular policy. Now, when I was there, we recognized that, one, a number of persons were coming back to the country having studied, and there was no place for them in the public service, even though the contract that they would have signed with the Ministry of Public Service said that they would get a job once they returned. Which suggested to us that they were sending persons on scholarships and to study areas that the public service did not need at that particular time. And so that means you're not getting value for money in those particular instances. Then there were cases where persons would come. They said that there is a need in this particular area. They wanted to study it. You recognize that there was a need, but in order to get the scholarship, they had to sign this particular contract which said they had to work for the public service. So we were having discussions as to, one, the needs of the public service and the needs of the country as a whole, and having a system in place that allows us to focus on both, given the dynamics that were happening. It's now an oil economy, the upstream and downstream jobs that were most likely going to be available. The reality that ExxonMobil was sending a lot of work requests for work permits from the Ministry of Citizenship, saying that these qualifications aren't in Guyana, and so they needed to bring persons in the country to get these particular jobs. And so, recognizing all of those things, we said we needed to put some system in place to ensure that Guyanese get the most of the opportunities that were not going to be available. And so we recognized that a human resource needs assessment survey was necessary. And what was that? It's basically understanding where the country is going to go, short, medium, and long term, the needs, the human resource needs of the country, short, medium, and long term. And then based on those needs, you then give out scholarships. So if you recognize that the public service would need 5,000 more persons in the next 5 years in this particular area or in a number of areas, then you would know you only need 2 persons to study in this particular field, 3 persons to study in this particular field, because you're gaining that in the next 4 years they will come back and there's a space for them because of where the public service is going. And also recognition that the country also needs to the education of the country needs to be increased, and so there will be areas in the private sector that would need to be filled. Recognize where those areas are, where those gaps are, and then allow people to go study on government funding, but knowing that they have to come back to serve the country and not necessarily the public service. But you have to put systems in place to ensure that that would be possible. So a human resources assessment survey would have been the next step that we were going to do once we would have gotten back in office. So all of those plans are actually right there in the Ministry of Public Service, and if the minister wanted to use them, she could have.
Tabitha Sarabo-Halley is my guest here this evening on Politics 101. I want to acknowledge those of you in the audience. I'm every now and again taking a little peek at some of the comments. Rita Singh said, well put together. MP Halley, well said. Patricia Kissoon, watching. Carol Glenn from a village, my whole village mate, well said, MP. Lorraine Barton said, good night, Mr. Hines and Miss Tabitha. You're welcome. You guys are doing great. I wish the fellow Guyanese could follow in your footsteps. Denise Munderson, you're there. Aubrey Austin said, PPP welfare checks to their supporters. Jack King said they've created a welfare system for sugar workers. The workers need to pay attention and not get used to money. They have not worked for it. It's wrong and it's going down a slippery slope. Denny's October, there's a name I recognize there. Good night, everyone. Good night, Denny's. Morgan, number 5 village in the house. Watching from home. Good night, MP and Dr. Hines. Some of the comments of the people there. You know, one of the things that I have noticed with this era from the no confidence vote to now is there is a new breed of Guyanese who have become so knowledgeable on public issues. They come on, they tune into programs like this, and you think you're teaching them, but you're really learning from them. I'm amazed at how they've become proficient in the law, understanding court system. If nothing else, I think Chinese now understood the court system in a way that my generation found it extremely difficult. A new political consciousness is the way I put it. Any comments on that?
Yes, and I think this is important. I think social media has a large role to play in this, and it is something that I think we may need to continue to use because you recognize it is important. And when you look at what has happened over the world over where social media is concerned, social media has been utilized in a number of different ways to get out a word, to advocate for certain things, and to help those in power to understand that, you know, their days are usually somewhat numbered in a number of instances. And why it is important for Guyana in our case is because, as you said at the opening of the program, that a lot of the media houses are close to what it is that we have to say. They have decided that they're not going to carry our side of the story. They've decided that they don't want to hear from us. They come sometimes to the press conferences, they get the press statements, and they refuse to even put it out. And it's an indication that, you know, they have chosen the road that they want to take. But the reality is that the audience is wider than who reads a newspaper. They are important. Newspaper is important, and so the Village Voice is important, and persons should get the Village Voice every Sunday because reading also is very important as well. But the social media has become very helpful and a very useful tool for the APN UAFC coalition, and for not only them, but for anyone that wants to advocate for something that is just. I won't say what the other things that you can do on social media, but it can be used as a very positive tool. And we saw that during the recount process. We couldn't get on a lot of the television stations and stuff, but persons were tuned into social media and they got a lot of the information from there. And so I think I would say that because of the social media, persons are a lot more aware. They're a lot more au fait with, and they're understanding what is really happening in the country at a level that they didn't before, and it breeds a new type of citizen. It breeds and that has always been the case, that the more educated you are, the less you can put over somebody's head, right? The more education you have, the less likely they are to swallow your nonsense when you bring it to them, because they understand and they know what is going on. And that is something that the PPP was using it for propaganda, but now they're recognizing that the social media has been very effective for us. And I don't like to talk too much about it, but when you look at what it is that they're doing and some of the statements that are being making, they're recognizing that we're making some serious inroads, because we're not coming to talk nonsense. We're not coming to talk frivolousness. We're coming to be very serious about the future of our country. We're very serious about where we want to see the country go. And we're very serious about holding them accountable and ensuring that they're transparent in what it is that they decide to do during this period.
And educated citizenry is very important for the democratic process. Amanza Walton this year was trying to make a point about educating our citizenry. Yes, people tend to get their information from the political party, but we're trying to develop an infrastructure where in addition to the political party, you get information from other media. You get information from Politics 101. You get information from In the Ring that is going to follow this program. You get information from Bench Cup. You get information from all. And that helps because diversity of views really ensure that you become more inquisitive, that you are able to sift out and see what's going on. Edward Anthony Perry is from Port Kaituma, Northwest. Is in the house. Welcome. Dennis John, drug deal and fraud. Is their family getting the scholarship? Omar George, the APNU, AFC. Alison Pearson. Alison is somebody I know. I think she's from Canada. Bonnie Allison. They know that they installed the PPP, always raping the treasury for themselves and their cronies. Welcome, Marie Gazelle is in the house. Sheena Hayes, good night, Miss Hines and Miss Ali. Welcome you all to Politics 101. Make sure you all follow the page. Spread the link so that people know that we're on. So let's talk about the budget. The budget debate ended in the way it ended. We had a budget forum last week where we had Professor Thomas, Carl Greenidge, Aaron Kemraj, and Adriana Thomas. And we had a big audience, and they learned so much about the budget that they did not get to learn from the budget debate. Tell us what that parliament has become from your standpoint. You're there.
The parliament has descended into an interesting place. And I'm very inquisitive. Even though I was minister in the previous government, I got there after the no confidence vote and so on. So we didn't really have a lot of parliament sessions. And so from September 2020, it was my first actual, even though I used to be there and to listen on from the gallery of what is happening, it was my first indoctrination into how it works and how you respond and respect each other, even though you're on different sides of the aisle. And what I recognized was this level of hatred. There's this level of rancor, this violence that was coming from the other side. And I couldn't figure it out. Like, why do you need to be so violent? Okay, you have your position, you have your interest. You want to govern the country in a particular way, fine. But why do you need to have this level of violence in the National Assembly? And so I asked a number of the MPs that were there in previous years, if this is the norm, if this is how things used to be in the last two sessions of Parliament. And what I got from them was that no, it was not. It has not always been this way. That before 2015, they were a lot more cordial. There were times when they would, if somebody has a birthday in Parliament, you could be able to celebrate that birthday in a decent way, in a decent manner, like regular human beings would. But since 2015, it was a shift, and now in 2020 is a further shift downward. And as I got this information from persons, I spoke with them, I recognize what transpired and what is happening. And it is basic. The PVP was of the belief that one, AP and UFC should not be in office. Why do we dare think that we should have power? How do we think, why should we think of ourselves of, wanting to be a minister and a president? Why do we think that we deserve to be, leaders of a country? And from 2015, like, it really got into their skin that they had to look at us in that particular way. And so from 2020, what you saw, what you're seeing now is a put you to your place sort of a behavior. You're second class, behave like second class. You're second class, please go back to that space. Don't think that you are at an hour level, or think that you should be a leader. So that is what I am getting from the other side, which is it's a very sad state, but it is the mindset of the people that you're dealing with. Where they don't believe that you should think that you should be in power. You think that you should lead any government. They think that you're really second class citizens. We walked into Parliament one morning. This was just after the Christmas holidays, and you got somebody throwing from the other side some derogatory comments for absolutely no reason. We were simply just walking into Parliament, and you realize that there's this distaste, and there's this gust that is just there and emanating, and they can't really help it. I don't think they realize that they're doing it. They just can't help it because how dare we come into a space? We do not belong here. We should not be here. And it also gets to them, I believe, that we believe we need to be there and we should be there and we deserve to be there just as much as they do. And so it's a group of young people who really don't allow them to put us in our place, right? And so there is that you keep getting the back and forth where that is concerned, because they believe we're supposed to be somewhere where we are not. And we're showing them that, you know what, we are here. We deserve to be here. We're just as human as you. We're just, even if not more intelligent than you are, and we are not going to allow you, to press us in against some wall at this stage. No, we're not here for that. We're here for the people. We're going to represent the people, and we're going to show the people that we're better leaders than you are.
My friend Siobhan McCalman says, I'm flabbergasted by the violence towards women in Parliament. She preempted my next question. That violence spilled over to you personally. And one of the goons, and this is my word, one of the goons in Parliament took it to another level when he assaulted you in the Parliament. And there are two things I want to point out about that incident. One is that the audience doesn't know that he had been verbally assaulting you long before that physical assault. And secondly, the women in the PPP, women, in a sense, endorse what that man did to you. I noticed you took on Minister Manik Chan the other day on social media on the hypocrisy towards violence and women. Tell our audience about how he was behaving towards you before that incident, and then your general comments on the incident.
Yes, well, as you said, persons are not aware, but when you go into Parliament, and he don't even like to say his name. He sits not too far from me, and he would inundate me with some, just some vile things he would say, things about my hair, about how I dress, about whether or not I am smart enough. Just some very sometimes lewd statements, crude statements that he would, and I attempt, to try to drown him out. Sometimes I put headphones in this one side ear so that I don't have to listen to what he says. It comes to a point where sometimes some of my MPs ask me, did you know Kwame before you came into Parliament? Did you guys have some history that we don't know about? That is how bad it was, that it was obvious that it was an attack on me. I really could not understand it. But like, he was sent there, as far as I'm concerned, he was sent there to do that. But I'm not sure if he was sent there to attack me per se, but he was sent there in Parliament to just create not a nice atmosphere for persons that wanted to be there. And so on the day that it happened, what precursed that, or what happened before, was that we were having a discussion on the GCOM matter. The numbers for GCOM was on the floor, and we were debating those numbers, and I was pressing Gail Teixeira on house registration and whether or not that is a part of the budgetary funds, whether or not any discussion was had at GCOM to deal with house to house, given what happened after the elections, given all the reports that came out from the different organizations that were observing. And so we had a back and forth on that issue. If you look back, you would see it was a heated back and forth on the issue of GCOM and house registration and the like. And so after that finished, I just left because I needed to use the restroom. And it the whole thing was sort of a shock, because I walked outside. Kwame was having interactions with Keith Lowenfield. There was something that was going on there. I couldn't pass. I couldn't pass because they were in the hallway in front of blocking me from passing. So I'm walking past. I spoke with Keith Lowenfield. He left, and then I'm now trying to get to the restroom, and Kwame is literally in my face. I think everybody knows what happened after that. And the response, the responses that I received from the PPP women, ministers and members of parliament was quite a shocker. I expected them to just remain quiet. It's they know the individual. He's not a saint. He has been convicted of assault before. They know what he is capable of doing because he has done it in the past. So if you're not sure, I expected them to just remain quiet. We can't say we're supporting Tabitha because she's on the other side, but we can't defend it either. So you just remain quiet. That is what I expected. But when I got into the parliament the next day, they were throwing things that I was lying and that I was pretending I was making it up. And I was trying to get some limelight and, all sort of things that it just literally shocked me because I did not expect that reaction from them. And it said to me that, you know what, no matter what happens on their side, they know who they have on their side. They know why they put them there, and they have to expect those things when they do happen. And so they knew that at some point it would blow up. And so they were ready for it, and they were going to respond the way they responded. And so it went before the DPP. The DPP said, throw it back to the speaker. And my take on it was that she recognized that there was something there. She didn't want to have to deal with it. And so she sent it back to the speaker to deal with. And the speaker said that based on the police report, there's no evidence of anything. And I don't think he will deal with the matter. So we have to wait until Parliament is called again. We don't know when that will be because for 2 months, there has been no parliamentary session. And so it is just there. I am speaking with my lawyer about filing private criminal charges, so that is in the train. And I want to say this to a lot of persons. A lot of persons have come up to me and said, why did I not respond? Why did I not take my shoe off and hit him back or something? And I would say two things to that. One, I am literally not that type of individual. It would not come to me to do something of that nature. I'm not saying that he would not have deserved it, but I was in such shock that it's not something that that's not part of my reflexive. That's not what I would do. But on the other hand, if it is that anyone knows the person that you're dealing with, I think I made the right decision, because I don't think if I responded, he would have stopped. I think it would have continued. And if I had only decided to throw a hand or something, I think his response would have been to continue hitting on me, because that is the type of person he is. And I think I chose the best in the situation. to just, take a step back and just walk away from it. And so I know persons are of, I should have responded, I should have reacted, and because he deserved it. But I think in the instance and in the situation and knowing who it is that you're dealing with, that I made the right decision at that set time.
And the information that you've given us about what happened before, the fact that he was heckling you long before that incident, shows that there is intent, and the DPP should have paid attention to that because there's evidence there.
Yes.
I remember that morning I got a text from a journalist who said, your daughter is sending up Gail to share pressure. So I said, no, my daughter don't heckle. I know that. And the journalist said, no, she's not heckling. She's asking Gail to share her questions. She's sending her crazy. I say, yes, that's my daughter. And I'm saying that leading up to his assault on you, there were things that happened before that I think the DPP should have paid attention to. So I am glad to hear that that episode is not over, that you are continuing to talk to your lawyer, because even in grim circumstances, we have to test the system. The system here in America with the policeman who was convicted, it is because the people in America tested the system and forced the system to work. And so I think that the matter of private criminal charges should not be abandoned, because we have to challenge them at all levels. Let's pivot. I know you've been going into communities. I understand that each member of parliament is assigned district or areas, and you go in and you meet with your constituents. What have you been hearing when you talk to people?
Well, there's a couple of different things. People are, of course, very afraid. They're very concerned. They see what the PPP has been doing, and they want to know what would be next. And basically, frankly, what I'm saying, what they would say to me, the question is whether Black people can survive in this country under a PPP, PPP being in power. And so that has been the major concern. They see what it is that they're doing, how it is we're trying to respond to them. And then they're saying, then what's next? Do we just roll over and keep allowing them to, time after time, assault, carry before the courts, fire? How do we respond to such obvious an attack on a particular segment of the society? So I get a lot of conversations surrounding that. When you go to the other major issue that comes up is the racism that people feel on and see and have to deal with on the ground. I was in Region 2 and I almost started crying because this young lady was saying to me that it was Easter time and some ministers were there sharing out kites. And so all of the people, the children from the community ran to get a kite. And then at the end of it, only persons with straight hair got kites. And all of the persons that here were not straight were looking at one another and trying to ask the parents, what happened? Why are you not getting a kite? Something wrong with me? What? And it was an obvious that only a certain set of people got kites, and the children. And these are young 8-year-old children that are looking at the situation and trying to grapple with it and understand what is going on. And and you hear things like that. I'm like, you have to be that cruel? Okay, you're in power already. You got you got what you were fighting for, but do you have to behave that violent that to little children? And for you to be that, so, and it's beyond comprehension, the lengths that they would go to in their racist behavior. I'm like, okay, you're dealing with adults. It's one thing to deal with adults, but to children, that's a level that we should not be able, we should not condone and we should not accept. So you heard some of that, and you heard the cries from the people. They said they would go and they would send in application forms, and the person would just throw the application forms in the bin right in front of them. And so when you hear that, and you're their representative in parliament, you know you cannot do anything about that. How do you respond to something like that? And there are instances with that, and you're like, wow, the viciousness of the PPP knows no bounds. And you are supposed to be the leader. You're supposed to be able to shelter the people from some, from those sort of things. And when you hear that, and you know that these people really do not care about the society, they really do not care about humanity, about people, and then they come talking about a one Guyana nonsense like that, and you have to listen to that, and you know that is untrue. And so when and so it really, it can get to you when it is you have to deal with situations like that, because the reality is on the ground, the people are hurting. They have to deal with a vicious PPP, a very vicious PPP on the ground in their daily lives. And it is hard and it is rough. But what the only thing that I can lean on is the fact that, you know what, we have gone through worse and we will get through it.
We have gone through worse.
We have gone through. We will get through it. We have to get through it. We're strong enough, and we will get through it. And they won't last. They're too vicious. They won't last. They cannot last, and we will have to ensure that they don't last.
Yeah, a friend of mine called me on the Manza Walton issue, and she said, David, I want to talk about all the other things. She said, I want to talk about the bravery of that young woman. And I said, go ahead. And she said, unprompted, she reached for the race issue. What is happening? And I said, when they go into the communities, that's what they're hearing. You have given the testimony here. You can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. It's there. And people speak feelingly about it. And as you said here, as leaders, you are supposed to protect the people. And I like that. The leader as the protector. And when you hear these stories, you then have to call on something deep inside. As you said, we've been through that before. Obviously, you are referring to historical memory, the Middle Passage, slavery, colonialism, that we overcome that. And we have to believe that we can overcome this, but it's in your face. It's in your faces. Tabitha, COVID-19. COVID-19. It's raging throughout the Caribbean. We know what's happening in India. We know what's happening in the United States. We know what's happening in Brazil. Trinidadians are going, police are going house to house to ensure that people who are being quarantined are there. Up to yesterday, they've gone to 6,000 homes. And they've locked down Trinidad because Trinidad is a gateway from Brazil. And I'm saying these things to say that the Trinidadian government is proactive in dealing with this issue. They may not be perfect, but they are proactive in ensuring that this thing is kept under control. Can we say the same for our country, Guyana? Can we say the same for our government? So I want you to speak to that issue from the standpoint of what the government has been doing or has not been doing, but also from the standpoint of the people who also have a responsibility in this situation.
The reality is that the PP doesn't know what to do. They obviously, I think they recognize now that they've dug themselves into a serious hole. And I'll tell you why. Because when it is during the elections, and so when we raised the flag and said, hey, this thing is here, we need to get ourselves in order because it will affect us severely. And they had their people on the ground telling people it's a hoax. It is coming back now to bite them, and bite them very badly. because they even are trying with the vaccines, and people are saying they're not taking the vaccines because the whole thing is a hoax and COVID-19 isn't real. The same thing that they had started off telling people has now ingrained in people's heads, and so they're not dealing with COVID-19 as seriously as it should be dealt with. The other aspect of it is that, if you can recall, when we started the COVID-19 task force, we requested that they be a part of it. We asked them to be a part of it because we recognized it was a national issue. We recognize too that they have different sections of society, and unless all are on board, then certain sections won't listen because of how our society is divided. And so with that, we asked for them to also be on the task force. They decided not to. They created their own task force at that point, and they said they knew what it is that they need to do, and they set up their own shop. Now they had the opportunity to show us how awesome their task force was, and it is failing abysmally. They don't know what to do. Their interest is in private sector and ensuring the private sector is continuously making money. And so they have no interest in locking down the society at any level. They have no interest in putting in curfews that may be able to assist. They have no interest in doing anything that you see happening in Trinidad because as far as Barajak Dio is concerned, which he said, the people will have to die. He did say that. So there is obviously, there's the even when you get to the COVID, and there's so many levels to this thing. On the one hand, they recognize that it's an issue. They don't know how to deal with it because, as far as I'm concerned, they don't have the. Don't let me go down that road. They're just not dealing with it. They seem not to know how to deal with it, and so then they decided, okay, they have the COVID-19, the $25,000 that they would give out. And in true style, true nature, nothing better. They ensure that the supporters get double, some get triple, and then they ensure that in a lot of the African Guyanese communities they get none. If it is that you're going to look to give owners and not give renters, knowing how society is, you know who you're targeting, because we know who the owners are and who the renters are,
Yeah.
right? So that alone tells you what they had in mind, and so holistically there was no proper approach, there was no proper plan. The plan that we left in place, of course, they decided to throw that out the window because they don't want to be seen to be using anything that the AP and UFC left, and so we as people have to deal with it the best way we see fit. And my take on it is one. You don't need PPP to tell you to go home at 6 o'clock. If we recognize that we need to do some things to help ourselves and to ensure that we stay safe and to ensure that we reduce the number of persons that are dying, then we have to do it. We don't need to wait on the government to say it. And so we have to take the you take the bull by the horn and say, you know what, this thing is getting out of control. Whether the government wants to admit it or not, there's things that we need to do as a society, and we get it done in our best interest because we want to survive this pandemic. And so I think it's a lot of that has to come and take place now. We need to have a second tier which says, the government isn't dealing with it. They don't want to deal with it. They're not interested in it because all they're interested in is in the economics of it all. And how it is that they can make as much money during this period. I think they realize that they're limited and they're not going to go to 2025. And so they have to amass as much wealth as they can in the short period because they don't know what will happen next. And so you see them just splurging to get the excesses, and they really do not care about the community. And if there's any way, the people of Guyana, supporters of the PP or not, if there's any way you can show or look at what is happening and say, he cares about you, and you look at the COVID-19 situation, you could see quite clearly that they do not care about the masses of society. And so we have to take it upon ourselves to do what is necessary to remain safe, because they're not going to use the state and use the apparatus that are available to them to help us in any way. But as far as they're concerned, once they can continue to amass wealth, that is all their interest is. And the rest of us can survive it the best way we know how. And if we don't, well, some people will have to die according to Barajak.
Well said. Tabitha, what, and I'm going to pose perhaps the most difficult question to you here, and that is, what are the values? What is the philosophy that guides your participation in politics? What are you in politics for? You're educated, you're talented, clearly you're eloquent, you could do anything with your life, but you've chosen to get into public service. What is it that guides you? What's the philosophy? What are the values?
Well, you see, it's a couple of things. Well, the main thing is our recognition that Guyana can be a lot more than it is. Yes, I could have chosen not to be in Guyana, stay outside, and have a good life, so to speak. But my interest is in the development of the nation, in the development of a society. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Rex Nettleford that I think he said he was talking about the Caribbean being such an interesting place with all these cultural fusions of people, and it's an interesting experiment to see how it all comes together. And for me, it is that it's a recognition that we can be more than we are, and that there's a greater for us than there currently is right now. And what I can do to add to that, I will put it in. Now, David, there, and this is something that I've been looking at recently. The difference in the two major forces, there's the PNC and the APNU AFC and the PPP, and you try to understand the thought, the belief, the values, what is guiding what it is that you're doing. And I am at a place where I think I get it. And one is, um, why so many persons gravitated to the coalition over from 2011 to now, and there's so many young people that have now come to the fore at this point, is they recognize that there's a major difference between the two. In the when the PP first started, and there was the communism, socialism, and the the difference in how you approach it. You may understand it and accept, no, not accept it, but understand what the communists were trying to do. But you also have to recognize the real world that you're living in, and how do you navigate that, at that particular time. And so you go to a socialist, a socialist understanding, so that you can navigate the whole world and what is happening at the world level. And you look at today, and you have a PVP that is interested in self. And I think that is it's primarily interested in self. It's interested in wealth. It's interested in greed. It's interested in amassing power for self. And you have on the other side a group of young people in the members of parliament. If you talk to them, they're interested in people, they're interested in unity, they're interested in development of a country, they're interested in nation building, they're interested in seeing Guyana move from where it is to where it can be, and recognizing that no one race can get us there, no one grouping can get us there, and that we have to come together in order to get there. And they're willing to put in the time, put their faces to the front to say, you know what, I am Muslim and I'm an Indian Muslim, but this is the way we need to go because the other side has nothing for us. I'm a pandit. I don't know, I'm a pandit from Port Morant, and I see what has happened over the last 20 something years, and I recognize that this is the direction the country needs to take. And my belief is in that it has to be servant leadership. It has to be from a place where you recognize that the those that are in leadership are not in leadership for self. It's in leadership to ensure that the majority of the population get what is theirs, which is the patrimony of the country. And I think I was talking about the social contract on another program earlier this week, and what it means, and I think more of this has to be discussed publicly. What it means to be Guyanese, what it means to be in a space called Guyana, how it is that we, we, we we balance against your individual need against the collective need of society. How it is you balance your individual want and what you think is right for you as an individual, what is in the four walls, my own, and what the society needs to move forward. And how it is that you could take the entire society forward and not just think about self and self-wealth and wealth for self and ensure that I have a big house, even though I walk outside of my house and the neighbor next door has nothing to eat. Is that a society we want, or is it a society where we can all may not have luxury, but we can all live in comfort? And I think that's a place we can get to in Guyana. We're less than 700,000 people, and we have wealth that many countries don't have. So it is not impossible to think that we can get there and the people can live comfortably. Every Guyanese citizen can live comfortably here in Guyana. We have the land, we have the wealth, we have the oil now, we have the gold, we have the diamond, we have the, and so we have the food, we have, we have the agriculture that could feed our country and probably the entire region. And so it takes a leader that understands that is about selflessness and about serving others, that would get us to that place. And quite frankly, what you get from the other side is the complete opposite. It is the complete opposite. And I am hoping that as the young people in the coalition continue to speak out about this particular matter, that people recognize and see that this whole thing about race, it is about ensuring that a few remain wealthy and that the majority of us are left in poverty to suffer by ourselves without any care from those that are at the top right now. And if it is that we want to continue, then we continue with how we're living. But I think we deserve more as a society. We deserve more as a people, and we should expect and command and and say to our leaders that we want more, we deserve more, and we will. If it is you don't want to give it to us, then we'll put people in the position that will create the nation that we need.
By your own testimony, you're sitting in parliament as an independent parliamentarian. What does that mean? How does that inform the way you engage politics and the political issues?
Well, it is interesting that you asked me that question. I feel I'm in a very enviable place. I recognized recently that EUC Guyana was somehow in that sort of position a few years back, and it's a place where you have the ability to speak frankly. You have you feel free enough to have access to all sides and to speak to everyone and try to mend fences where that can happen, and bring another level of ideas to the fore and not be afraid to speak. Now, I'm not saying that anybody is afraid, but I'm saying that there's a level of freedom that the independence brings, and I have been utilizing it as much as I could. I think, in fairness to all sides, in spite of what people may think, the coalition as a grouping, I think, has grown. Yes, there are still issues. Yes, there are still concerns, and the different parties have to work out their own issues that are there. But I think there has been a level of growth that has taken place, and it has been a journey that I have been able to see happen over these last 5-6 years now, and the independence allows me to also, how should I put it, to not only internalize but to analyze things in a different way. I can hear both sides and see where things, where things are, what you're saying, and how you're saying it, and try to mend those things together. And so it has been an interesting journey. Sometimes people say independence means that you're in no man's land. You don't really have an owner, have an owner. But there's a positive to it, and I think over time you'll see where it goes. I'm not sure where it will lead me as yet. But I am grateful for the opportunity. As persons would see, I've had the opportunity to speak my mind on a number of issues, and when things come to the fore, I jump to it when I can and when I need to. And so, yes, I am here as an independent thus far, and we see where it leads.
Do you think that the fracturing of the APNU, do you hold out hope that, well, first of all, do you think that coalition politics is the politics of the future? And secondly, do you think that it is possible for the APNU to regroup and to continue the mandate that it has set itself 10 years ago?
Um, One, yes, politics is the future, and in a country like ours that is multicultural, multi-ethnic, it has to be our future. And so, you look at the PPP, and sometimes you say to yourself, you don't even want to have any conversation with them because of what they bring to the table. But the reality is that they have supporters, and it's not about them, it's about their supporters and bringing their supporters along. And so you have to look at the bigger picture, where those things are concerned. So yes, I think coalition is the future. That is the direction we need to go in, whether we recognize it or not right now. Some of us are holding out that we don't need that. I think there's some of us in Guyana that believe that a one-party state would work, and they're working their darnest to accomplish that, cutting off the media, reducing the budgetary allocations for the a lot of the constitutional agencies, all of those things, and you see where they're heading or where they're trying to go. But I think the coalition is what is necessary for Guyana to move forward effectively. And the APNU, I do hope and I believe that it can come together. I will say this: the outlook has to be on the future. If we keep their issues, all coalitions have issues, all coalitions have different perspectives on the way forward, different uh, different strong points. There are things that you're interested in. There, your agenda may be a bit different, and if it is that we hold fast to our strict agenda, not willing to compromise, then what is the point in it all? And so it has to be future. It has to be a sort of recognizing that things happened in the past, a recognition that we can't go back and change those things, but we can work on a better future, not just for ourselves, but for those that are coming after us. And if that is our outlook, then we will find ways to work together. And I think we can in the APNU and the APNUFC to move forward and to move the country forward.
Well said. And from a purely subjective standpoint, that is what this program sets out to do, to set an example. I'm WPA, everybody knows that. My guests on this program, I have not had a single WPA. I think I'm having a single WPA person on as a guest yet. Not because I want to set the example that it is not the party that matters. What matters at the end of the day is the collective.
Yes.
It's ultimately the country. And I hope we're setting an example on this program of what it is to have your own views, have your own biases, but also recognize ways in which our agendas come together. Yes, there are ways in which our agendas depart,
yes,
but there are ways in which our agendas come together. And I don't see my agenda in many ways as being different from the agenda of the coalition, of the APNU. As Tabitha said, there are differences. Things have happened in the past. We have to set our face to the future. Tabby, I want to end on two notes. One, I would like you to say something about the spate of violence among on women coming from our men folk?
Um, I will take this in two different directions. One, there is the common thing that you hear from a lot of people, which is that when at the first sign you leave, that's a normal thing that you see. But for me, it is deeper than that. I think you have to really interrogate what is happening in the society, and it's a combination of things. And people don't like to look at the psychology of things and how things affect other things, but they just look at the result and don't properly interrogate and what is really happening. And my belief is that when you have a society that is so harsh on people, so harsh on on everyday people who just trying to get by and trying to add their 2 cents together and make things work and happen for themselves, and you look around and it's still difficult, especially in this COVID-19. I don't think we spend a lot of time the effect of COVID-19 on the family, the effect of COVID-19 on the finances of the family, and how that would impact the individual and also the family as a whole. And so you see a lot of these things play out in society, and you're like, oh my goodness, where this is coming from. But it's a ripple effect. Things happen because other things are happening and are causing people to feel in a way that they have no other way to turn. It is horrible that is happening to our women. It is something that should not happen. We're all against it. But unless we diagnose the true problem, we will continue to see it happen. And I think that is where we need to get. We have a Ministry of Human Services, or whatever it's called right now. And we need to look at how it is the policies that we're implementing, the decisions that we are taking at the top are impacting the regular person on the ground, because that is where it is. Most times it's financial issues. Most times it is about your pocket and the fact that you can't feed your family, the fact that your children come in and your wife or come into you and they're saying that they need money for something and you really cannot find a way to supply it. And so you end up in some very serious places, and I understand that it should not have, but we have to diagnose the problem. And so when you're in you 2015 to 2020, it was a cultural shift that was beginning to happen in our society, because my belief is that things happen from the top down, in sense that if it is that you are a good leader, you're an honest leader, you are a leader that's for the people recognize that you're interested in their welfare and well-being, that you're not crass, that you are not provocative, that you are that manifests in the society, and it helps to inculcate a culture of a certain kind of a person, a certain kind of a citizen in a country. And so when at the top you have people who are really, they just do not care. I keep saying this often, but it is the truth. They just do not care about the society, do not care about the people. They do not care about the impact of their policies on the people. When you see that the past budget, they decided to increase the debt ceiling so much, and then they try to tell us that it doesn't mean anything, when what they're doing is ensuring that we have to pay more taxes to pay back those debts, and where that would lead us in the foreseeable future, because it will come out of our pockets, because they won't pay it back. As minister in government, you don't really pay any taxes. The amount, and so they really just don't care how their policies affect the man and woman on the ground. And so they do whatever they need to do to amass their wealth, and then we have to deal with the repercussions of it. And then it comes out in all sort of ways in the society, And then we wonder why, not recognizing that it's a direct link between the policies that are being implemented that are affecting, and it's affecting how it is that we get to live day to day. You see the high rise in prices of commodities, of goods that you have to get day to day in the stores. You're seeing that the oil is rising, the flour, everything, sugar is increasing. And if anybody on the ground, you know that that impacts whether or not you can eat tomorrow morning for most of Guyana. And what all they're interested in is not having to go to Parliament. And this is what it is. They don't want to go to Parliament to ask some money from the Natural Resources Fund to, to do some projects. And so what they decide to do is raise the debt ceiling so they can borrow money on that money that is in the Natural Resources Fund. And so that they could thief more money, as far as I'm concerned. And then we have to deal with the repercussions of it. And so we're talking about the society and the violence in society, and it is a direct reflection of the leadership and the poor leadership that we're dealing with over the last 9-10 months.
Very comprehensive analysis of the social situation, linking it to the larger political imperatives in the society. And I think that's another perspective on the violence that we see every day meted out to women and children. Let me acknowledge Desiree Chapman, who says, hello, Dr. Hines and MP Halley. I'm in your audience watching from Great Britain. It must be midnight there or close, and they're staying up to listen to us. I'm going to close out by speaking directly to the supporters of the coalition, African Guyanese and Indian Guyanese who support us, Amerindian Guyanese. Since the elections, we've taken some blows, setbacks. The most recent depression ruling against us. It's really hard to keep your chin up in this time. But you all are the leaders. Give people some love and some inspiration.
All right. So first of all, let me say that as Dr. Hines rightfully said, we've taken a lot of blows. Things have happened that we didn't expect. We have to deal with those realities as they come. But this is what I do. I recognize that there's a shift that is happening in our society. There's a shift at the political level that is taking place, whether we recognize it or not. And there's a shift that is happening in the young people in our society. As was rightfully said, people are more aware, they're more in tune, they know what is happening, they see what is happening, and they're analyzing more the situation that we're currently facing as a country. My honest belief is that we're in for better days. It is not going to come, it didn't come when we expected it to, but I think it will come because things happen for reasons and a shift is taking place, and that shift would see a leadership that we deserve as a country and a leadership that would look out for the best interests of the people. And so while we're in this stage where we're hurting and the hurt is real, I understand it. Like a lot of people think Parliament MPs make a lot of money. We don't. What we get is seen as a stipend, so to speak. And we have to do that, and we also have to go into the communities. My husband lost his job when the government changed as well, and we're trying to make ends meet in all of it. So I understand what has been happening in the society since August 2nd, 2020. But we have to continue to be hopeful because, as I see it, there's a shift that is taking place that needed to take place to get us to the next section. A generation has passed. A generation is in the thing of passing, and a culture, the culture that we've been inundated with over the last 20-something years, as much as it's trying to hold on, knows that it's coming to an end. And so my word to you is to, as much as hard as it is right now, it is going to get better because we are going to ensure it gets. And when I say me, I don't mean just the MPs. All of us have to work together to do that. And we will do that. We will do that. So you will see us in your communities. We will come to you. We'll come to continuously speak to you. We're going to be in Region 3 on Saturday. So look out for a lot of the MPs in the region this Saturday, and we will continue to engage you, to hear your concerns, to represent you, and we will take action when it's necessary to continue to protect your interest and to ensure that at the end of it all, that you benefit from all that is yours in this great country.
Tabitha Sarabo-Halley, a former Minister of Public Service and now Shadow Minister, Member of Parliament, one of the new leaders, set of new leaders that is coming on board and that I consider to be the future of our country. From a purely personal note, I think you've given a good account of yourself. I am proud of you, and I am glad that I may have played some small role in helping to mold you into what you have become. And as we used to say when I was a boy, you ain't seen nothing yet. You all ain't see nothing yet. Thank you, Tabitha, for coming through.
Thank you for having me, and just thank you for your viewers for staying with us throughout the program.
Thank you. And I, of course, have the final word. There you have it. The Honorable Tabitha Sarabo-Halley, and a new leader. And I think from the comments I've been seeing, you are well satisfied with her. She spoke to the issues. She showed she's not just knowledgeable about scholarships and public service, but she can speak on a range of issues. She acknowledged that our philosophy is based on servant leadership. And I think that is the kind of leadership that we need in the country. Let me do a couple of things. Let me wish all the mothers happy Mother's Day. All the fathers who've been mothers. I know what it is to be a mother because I was raised by mothers. There was no father around. We were raised by mothers. And I don't think when I look at the road that I have traveled, I have not always lived up, but I don't think that I have let down those mothers. So I want to thank all the mothers who have mothered and fathered our nation, who have mothered and fathered our boys and girls, who have nurtured our society and continue to do so. I want to say Happy Mother's Day to all those single mothers who continue to battle against the ravages in the modern society, to ensure that your children can walk one step further than you have walked. Often we pay homage to men because it's so easy to do so. But it's the women at the end of the day who have cradled us, who continue to watch us. I'm getting on to be an old man now, but my mother continues to mother me. My sisters continue to shelter me. And my nieces are very tenacious. My daughters, quiet as they are, nevertheless continue to mother me. And I think that my experience is no different from the experience of many men in our society. Happy Mother's Day to all of you on this program. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers around the country and around the world. You see, we have to press on, because if we don't press on, somebody's going to press us down. So we've got to press on. And often, as we see on this program, it's the women who are in the front. the women who are in the vanguard come from a village where they stopped the train. And it was the women who were in front to make sure that those who are in power recognize that ordinary people are people too. We want to thank all of you who have come on to the program. I couldn't get to all the names, but I was able to recognize some. I know my old partner, Dennis Booker, is somewhere there in the audience. Officer, if you're here this evening, big up to you. On Sunday, on Mother's Day, when you all have finished serenading your mothers, I want you to tune in to Say It Speaks. The women are going to weigh in on this Amanza Desir issue. Lolly Nestor, a warrior, is going to be on. Vanessa Kisoon, aha, a warrior, is going to be on. I'm keeping the other names in my pocket, but it's going to be quite a show on Sunday night on Say It Speaks. So serenade your mothers earlier so that you can tune in to the program. On Tuesday, the men defended Amanza. And on Sunday, it's going to be the women's turn to defend Amanza. Vanessa Kisoon, Lorly Nestor, Nicole Cole, I'm letting out them, and a few more are going to be on Sunday night at 7 o'clock. Sage Speaks. I want, before I go, to thank those who have contributed materially to the program so that we can sustain it. Those of you who have not done so can do so by whatever means you're comfortable. I know they've put up 2 things there on the screen, but if it's easier for you to contribute by other means, just inbox me on Facebook or email me and we can arrange that. Remember to pick up your copy of The Village Voice. Those of you overseas can take out a subscription for a relative or relatives in Guyana, because you get to read the paper on online for free, but you can make that small contribution, take out a subscription for your relatives in Guyana. So again, thank you all so much for staying with us. I hope once again we have been able to meet the bar, and that bar is to witness for the best in us, not the worst in us. Until next week, Tuesday, when I hope to have another all-star lineup. This is David Hines thanking you for taking the time to stay with Politics 101. I love you. I love you. I love you all, people, from the bottom of my heart. Good night.